diaspora, the diasporans in the US didn't get a chance to go around and talk. Now, you guys have been in the US for a while. There's been something that has been in existence for over a decade, the African Growth and Opportunities Act, AGOA.
Yep, correct.
Where the United States basically says that they don't have the ability, or they do not believe that they'd be able to go around and get some of these particular products sold into the US because the cost of labor is quite expensive. So I would not necessarily discourage anyone from business, but like I already said, that it just needs you to have some systems that will allow you to be able to move on through. Because in as much as there's been all this taxation, the positive story that not so many people are talking about is that we had a 5.7% growth in the last year. Right after the election, it was only at 4%, it's gone to 5.7%. And the projections are, things are going on through. So despite
What are maybe some areas that diasporans are investing in Kenya generally that have tax implications? Hila, I'm going to start with you because you're in Kenya and you're seeing where diasporans are coming and throwing their money. Which sectors are you seeing diasporans investing in? Hila.
All right. So the remittance from diaspora, if you look at the most recent data by the National Bureau of Statistics, says that close to about 500,000 Kenyans in diaspora remit up to 667 billion annually. 667 billion Kenyan shillings.
Wow.
To place that into context, the most recent budget that was read yesterday projects that we should be utilizing 4 trillion. So 667 billion was to be placed as a percentage of the 4 trillion, that's 17%. So 17% is almost close to a fifth of what the country's current expenditure or projected expenditure is. So it's not a small pittance when you're looking at what the remittances back home are. Now, the issues that have, popped up within the last 12, 18 months, previously agriculture was an area where there'd be a lot of focus, but the input costs, the cost of a liter of fuel, just being able to get your produce from the farm to the formal markets has made it a very tough venture. And I know people who, have decided for one reason or the other to keep away from agriculture because it'll be an issue of fertilizer. You don't get the correct fertilizer, you get fake fertilizer, you will not get any subsidies on that, you will be hit on a fuel perspective, etc., etc. And I mean, the list is endless. If you're in animal husbandry, the cost of feeds has more than tripled within the last 3 years. So agriculture has become a very dicey bit unless you have the ability to produce your own feeds for your animals, or you've got some ingenuity on utilizing organic manure. It may not necessarily be something that is worthwhile, but there's still those who believe and take a leap of faith. So that is an area, because at the end of the day, you'll still require to get people to be fed, but there are various challenges. Now, tourism within the last 2 years post-COVID has actually had a very, very tremendous growth of about 28-29%. And whereas maybe 10 years ago, everyone would be looking at living in hotels and resorts, people are now looking at getting into Airbnbs and, opportunities to perhaps be able to go around and get in a flat in a place like Mombasa, Kwale, Kilifi, and even Nairobi would be able to go around and at least allow you to have something that will increase in its value and also be able to generate a bit of revenue. So at this point in time, if you're to go around and look at some place where you can, try and see something that you can do without necessarily having a risk, of course, taxation will still get you everywhere. I would say real estate, particularly focusing on short-term stays within the various tourist hubs around in Kenya, would definitely be a bet to move on through. Business, the business environment at home is tough. So, if you actually have, the nil, and I say this with a lot of respect, if you do not actually have the ability to snuggle it all through, you'll be heartbroken very quickly.
What do you mean by snuggle it all through? As in, like, stay for the long term?
Yes.
Okay, all right. That's quite interesting. I mean, this is mind blowing.
I would not necessarily discourage anyone from business, but like I already said, that it just needs you to have some systems that will allow you to be able to move on through. Because in as much as there's been all this taxation, the positive story that not so many people are talking about is that we had a 5.7% growth in the last year. Right after the election, it was only at 4%, it's gone to 5.7%. And the projections are, things are going on through. So despite
areas where Kenyans are invested in, and I think Kila mentioned areas like farming, which is becoming dicey, real estate. Which other areas do you guys think Kenyans are invested in Kenya outside the traditional real estate
I would say specialty hospitals.
If you'd be looking at an area to place in opportunity, which is definitely gaining a lot of ground. Now I'll talk about maybe if people have a huge appetite for mega infrastructure projects, energy generation. So there's already a very critical amount of wind power that Kenya is exporting into southern bit of Ethiopia and Sudan. But I might have a couple of guys also keen on trying to consolidate what they've had, they've built up in those for a while. They have a very interesting energy project they're trying to place up, splitting hydrogen, which apparently produces a lot more energy than hydro. But of course, there'll be a couple of hoops. We'll need to be able to speak with the relevant fellows. So the country is definitely still hungry for mega projects. So if you are working with a conglomerate or high net worth individuals who are looking at placing some infrastructure projects, particularly trying to target the health segment for transformative growth, and there's a level of reception that you can go around and get with foreign partners and energy, but that talks towards the big pushing ones. But at this point in time, if you're to rate it, I would look at trying to tap in on short stay options across the traditional tourism sides. I would not necessarily discourage anyone from business, but like I already said, that it just needs you to have some systems that will allow you to be able to move on through, because in as much as there's been all this taxation, the positive story that not so many people are talking about is that we had a 5.7% growth in the last year. Right after the election, it was only at 4%, it's gone to 5.7%. And the projections are, things are going on through. So despite the fact that there's a very aggressive collection of taxes and people are feeling the pinch, there are still opportunities on a business perspective. Become niche. There's definitely a lot of potential to be able to go around and get curious in. I mean, I've been in Atlanta for about a week, and I'd like to agree with Omosh. Benny has actually also taken me up and about. So there's a lot of activity. I met a lady who's doing leather bags, manufacturing them in Nairobi,
yes,
and importing them into the US.
I think I know.
And the bags are not going in for anything less than about $200.
So there is very high quality bags.
Very high quality bags.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there is opportunity. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean that you could go around and sell the items in Kenya, but what she's doing is something that is, I think, really transformational. She has actually set up a manufacturing site, but her target market is in the US. So there are opportunities to go around and try and also empower the people back home while also tapping into your market in Kenya here. So in the US here.
So Hila, for something like that, would if one were to try to go through and do the same sort of thing, where would the Chamber of Commerce come in? Because you came in on an American Chamber of Commerce initiative. Does that mean that you then liaised with the Kenya Chamber of Commerce, or was it the Nairobi Chamber of Commerce, or the International Chamber of Commerce?
So very, very, very great question. There's normally a trade attaché at each and every consul mission across the world. And the American Chamber of Commerce is basically an organization that has a dotted line to the American Embassy that looks at opportunities that can be tapped into. The one disappointing thing that I picked up in the time that I was around, it would appear that it was a bulk of the Kenyans who traveled from Nairobi to the US who had the chance to mint the opportunities and get a chance to understand where to plug in. But I got the feeling that the diaspora, the diasporans in the US didn't get a chance to go around and talk. Now, you guys have been in the US for a while. There's been something that has been in existence for over a decade, the African Growth and Opportunities Act, AGOA.
Correct.
Where the United States basically says that they don't have the ability, or they do not believe that they'd be able to go around and get some of these particular products sold into the US because the cost of labor is quite expensive. So if you're already in the US, you've received a level of grounding. The first point to be able to look at a business that you can still go around and offload some of those products in the US would be the African Growth and Opportunities Act. And then in some instances, leather products are a big deal in this country. And AGOA provides African businesses the chance to be able to go around and get that into this part. There are also, I think, some select skins, I think snake hide, alligator hide, etc. If you want to go around and link up with guys at Mamba Village and tell them kichinja Mamba, mimi nitabeba ngozi nilete hapa, but there's opportunity. But it would just be a matter of being able to understand what sort of trade arrangements are already there, because if you're looking at then having that business, tapped into the US market because you already got grounding, you already have the contacts, there are opportunities on that front. But that would require you to maybe look at what sort of concessions countries like Kenya have, where your target market would be, such that you then have the ability to create a manufacturing site. It doesn't have to be big and etc., but you then get the items into the US and you now manage your business in the US, but the products are made in Kenya. That actually has an effect of being able to also improve the lots of people, because unemployment remains a big issue in Kenya, while also tapping into your networks in the US.
So, Hilai, are you saying that those sorts of initiatives are where you would run to the Chamber of Commerce, the local
Chamber of Commerce? That is correct. That is correct. Okay. That is correct. I have the contacts. If anyone is interested, I have the number of the CEO of the American Chamber of Commerce. I have the number of one of the trade attaches in there, who also went to that grade school. I will not say which one it is, I think, but they already mentioned it. But if anyone is interested, I'm more than willing to go around and share the contact so that anyone who's listening into the show, who's keen on it, can actually get the assistance required. And they tend to be very, very responsive, very responsive.
Now, one thing, Hila, I will say that with these meetings that the chambers of commerce do, there's the American Chamber of Commerce and there's the Kenyan Chamber of Commerce. A lot of these meetings, I feel like they sometimes tend to become, for lack of a better word, like a good vibes event. Because a lot of people who go there, you're asking a question, like, okay, please come tell us what you gathered from there. And they actually have nothing to tell you. They have pictures on Instagram, they have pictures on social media, but they have nothing to tell you. Especially now let me not necessarily put it on the Chamber of Commerce. Let me just say the overall, because now there was a mix of a lot of people. The overall contingent that came with the president, I mean, of course, there was a mix-up with the Chamber of Commerce. There were so many things that happened, but there was no clear place to go and see this is what was happening here for people who are not physically there. So, and when you ask people, it's kind of like they don't know what to tell you.
Let me add something over here, and I think maybe that's the. Are you talking about Maxwell Okello?
Yes.
So Maxwell Okello was being interviewed. I did not know about this, but there's the American Chamber of Commerce, the Kenyan chapter. He's the one who heads it.
Okay.
He was being interviewed on spice.
Oh yeah.
And
the one who was saying is not Okello Max.
Yes, that one.
Yeah. Okay.
So, and it was it's interesting how I think the representation of about 250 plus companies in there. Mm-hmm. But apparently with AGOA, we've only managed to do what, 9%, or is it 16%? It's a very, very small.
Very small, yeah.
That is correct. Now,
very small.
I will seek to answer your question, Badawi, and I hope I'll be satisfactory in my response.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned about the Chamber of Commerce. So I have gone into forums of the Kenya National Chamber of Commerce and Industry. What they basically do, I'm sorry to say this, and I know I've got a couple of friends in there, they're a talk shop. I've gone for a couple of KEPSA sessions. I'm sorry to also say they're a talk shop. The differentiator that I've gotten with the American Chamber of Commerce Kenya chapter is that they have all of, I think, close to 300 members in there. And they break down the members into their various industry lines. So you'll get one for financial services, you'll get one for extractives, minerals and extractives, you'll get one for logistics and supply chain. And then these small cohorts would actually then be asked, there's a session to go to San Francisco, as was the case in September last year, or Washington, D.C., as the case was in March. What sort of people are you looking at trying to get? So they ask you this about a month or two in advance. And then they basically go around and reach out to their counterparts in the US and say, fine, we've got these various sub-segments from Kenya. Which particular sort of people and at what scale would you like to meet? By the time I was actually getting in to the American Chamber of Commerce on the Friday, 24th of May, I already had a hit list of who I was going to talk to. So they make it, easier to go out and have the conversations so that you don't just necessarily sit around in a crowd, take your cup of tea or coffee, eat an apple and say, I feel good vibes and
Good vibes.
good vibes and inshallah, you
Yeah.
know. But the plug that they need to be able to do is to also understand if they, for instance, are coming to Atlanta next year or they're going to Los Angeles, have they been able to tap into understanding what the Kenyan community would be interested in? Because we can talk about people reading the AGOA Act right now, knowing what the opportunities are. But do they have the ability to liaise? And this becomes a bit dicey because they're the American Chamber of Commerce, but they're seeking to understand what the Kenyans in the US are doing. This is where the interplay with the Kenyan embassy missions should come through and tell them up in advance. The feeling that I got was that the foreign mission in here was very concerned about the red carpet that they'd be giving to VIPs, being able to get them vehicles, but I don't get the feeling that they tapped into the local community to tell them, so you guys have been here for a while. What opportunities are you looking at? Because we have this list of people coming to Kenya. Who do you think you can actually collaborate with so that you can actually get, you know, some level of mutual benefit? I think that is the last plug that needs to be placed there, because I can tell you, from the guys that I've had a chat with who came in from Kenya to the US, they're happy. I am personally happy about the contacts that I made, but I cannot necessarily say the same about the Kenyans based in the US who attended those particular forums.